This is the Reds Down Under podcast, the best place to follow the Reds in Australia. Enjoy the show.
We are the Reds Down Under, and this is our podcast.
So, Jim, mate, thanks so much for coming on Reds Down Under. It's an absolute privilege, mate, to have you on. You're based in South Carolina. How's your day looking at the moment, mate?
You know, we got a good, nice day ahead of us. It's August. It can be so hot and oppressive, but we got a bit of a cooler day today, and no problems, no worries on the landscape. I'm sure I'll find them later.
Yeah, all right. You let me know. All right, you send me a message. Obviously, look, I say this to guests all the time. Obviously, we've had one American guest on the show, my good mate John. He's from Philly. But most of our guests so far are from Australia, and I always ask them the same question. Why on earth did you decide to support Liverpool Football Club when you could have picked anyone?
Well, I could have picked anyone. I was a man in his, this was the late 90s, so I was in my early 30s. My band, Hootie The Blowfish, were traveling abroad. I was thrilled to be going to places like England, Scotland, Ireland, Germany, and Spain. And I knew deeply I wanted to find a British team to support. I'd had some old flags given to me as a kid, and we didn't have access to much in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But I knew I was looking for a team, but I didn't want to just jump on anything. At the time, I think United were probably the favored team and really looking good. But this guy from the record label, Warner's, said, Jimmy, come with me today after sound check. I want to take you somewhere. And he brings me to the practice ground where Liverpool, with an American goalie called Brad Friedel, are training. And we're against a brick wall outside of it looking in, and he seems to have good access. And I'm like, this is awesome, like up close and sort of personal. We didn't get to meet anyone, but I was thrilled to watch practice for 20 minutes. And then he says, well, come on, I'll take you somewhere else. So we pulled up to the back of Anfield, and he flips his car keys to the security guy and says, we'll be back in, 45 minutes. And he walked me through on a personal, tour of some of the history. And again, we didn't have much access to it on TV in the late 90s. And I knew of the history a little bit, but at the same time, that's the same trip, we were in the hotel and there was a Hillsborough retrospective. It was probably, 7, 8 years on by then, but I was just emotionally moved. And I thought all of this together in the same trip, this is my destiny. And I'm so thankful because I had several signs from the universe pointing me towards the dreaded United as a kid. And I always said, nah, I don't think so. And finally it becomes Liverpool, and it was perfect. I've loved every bit of the history I've been able to learn. I've loved the culture in Liverpool, one of the greatest music towns in the world for a musician. And I've loved going over there. Turns out I have friends from there. It's all right. Even the tough days, I love maybe being a little bit of an underdog in the early 2000s, trying to rebuild this thing. But, we get to make up for the years we missed as Americans, because we do get a lot of access now to Liverpool on TV. It's been brilliant.
I mean, you've got a quick side note before we move on. I absolutely loved Brad Friedel, and I think he was one of them goalkeepers who got better with age. Actually, when he left Liverpool, he went to Aston Villa and clubs like that. He was absolutely brilliant. Blackburn Rovers as well. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more as well about. We can't have you on and not talk about your music and Hootie the Blowfish and you play yourself as well, as a single artist. Traveling around the world, I mean, you've stopped in at so many cities. So now that you're a Red, how many times have you managed to get back to Liverpool?
Well, we were there most recently last May to watch a 2-2 draw against Arsenal. Brought my kids for the first time, so they got to see Anfield. That was wonderful. I did get to see this rather exciting and historical match in March of 2023. I went over with a group of guys my age and then a collegiate football team, a soccer team from here in the States. And some of us skipped over. They had changed the date for the United Liverpool match from a Saturday to a Sunday. So suddenly it was available for us on our tour. So we raced over there and watched a little 7-0 drubbing that will
Ooh,
go down in the books.
ooh, a little 7-0. Just pop over and go and watch a little 7-0. Mate, I watched that game. I think, you know, the way history, your mind plays tricks on you, doesn't it? But my missus, her dad, is a United fan. And I'm sure I either watched the 5-0 at Old Trafford with him here, or I watched the 7-0. But I think it was the 7-0, and by the time it got to like 5, he was like making all the excuses. Oh, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter now anyway. And I was like, it does. 7-0.
It
7-0.
I could not believe what I was seeing, and then realizing it was history. You know, this doesn't happen often, and to be in there was just amazing. I had made the mistake on the first goal as a guy who grew up playing soccer. I sort of saw it developing, and I stood up as the second to last pass was coming across, and the old gentleman behind me afterwards, after the celebration, says, kindly don't stand up until the goal goes in. I was like, oh, shoot, yeah, sorry about that, because I stood up in front of him. And by the 5th goal, he said, you can come back anytime. Don't worry. Good luck.
Yeah. You were sorted by that point. But it's hard, isn't it? Because when the ball comes through and you sense it, you know what I mean? And sometimes, as you say, you know, you call it soccer, I call it football. It's the same game. But when you play the game a little bit and you can see that the play coming, and when the ball comes in and you're just ready to go up for it, aren't you? I mean, what was the atmosphere like that night, that 7-0?
I mean, tense. You know, the first half was tight. You felt like we were the better team all along, and but anything can happen between those teams. And on any night, there's been big disappointments, and even since then, they've sort of had our number. While they're on a downward crescendo, we still can't seem to get by them at times when we should. And so it was tense in the first half. The first goal was like just, you know, the air lets out of the whole stadium, and you feel like, okay, we can at least breathe now. But it's almost joyfully comical as the third and fourth and fifth and on come in. People start realizing no one gets to see this very often, and so yeah, it's just so light. And it was the beginning of a great long trip for me. We got to go with a U22 U21 setup from Furman University in South Carolina, and they played some U21 games up at Burnley and Crystal Palace and Fulham, and we got to see a Champions League game, see Tottenham get knocked out. So there was a lot of great things that whole tour, but that was the best way you could ever start it.
Oh yeah, absolutely buzzing, mate. I mean, that's made my decade, that result, you know what I mean? Beating them 7-0 is just the absolute best, isn't it? And then beating them 5-0 at Old Trafford was just as sexy. So, I mean, what sort of players then? Because I think sometimes with fans like yourself from overseas, sometimes a lot of the pull towards a football club is the sort of the players in that setup. You know, when you get an affiliation with the players, they sort of capture the imagination. So what sort of players were playing at the club at the time, which, you know, you thought, I like the look of these boys?
I mean, it was when we first started getting access, which was probably around 2005 Champions League, when they were starting to show it on ESPN here and Fox Sports. We weren't at a big high point, but of course winning the Champions League was pretty amazing. I think we've always had that strange mixture of Europe and Britain, and I've liked that. I like it when we have 4 or 5 players on the field that are either English or Irish. I don't know why I obsess over that. I just like a team that is British based. Now it's changed a lot through the last 20 years. It's more international than it's ever been. But I grew up on TV watching Gerard, and that's like he's the heart of any team that I can think of ever watching is him in the middle running things and being a human highlight reel. And even as he bows out late in his career with a little disappointment that we couldn't quite get him over the top, it's still him in the centerpiece of it all. That's why I could wear his jersey today. I'm thinking going through my collection. Which one can I wear for this show? What is the meaning and the specialness? And it's him at the heart of it. And it's what my son, who's now 21, grew up. I taught him soccer and taught him to watch Liverpool. And at the heart of it is really the mentality of a beautiful game and the importance of the passing that may not make the highlight reel on our children's, Instagram feeds, but the stuff that creates. And I've always loved that aspect of the game, the build up and the guys that can see the field like no one else can. Again, you maybe not on the highlights, but it's the important passes. So I taught him to watch that way, and I think he's learned it. And Gerard was, maybe the best at that. So he's at the heart of it for me.
Yeah, Stevie G, mate, and I've spoken about it on the podcast before. We had some really good players down the years, don't get me wrong. Like even when you started watching the Reds, Robbie Fowler and then Michael Owen comes in and really brilliant footballers, don't get me wrong. Steven Gerrard was just completely a class above and could genuinely have played for any other football club and would have been their number 8. He was unreal, and the amount of times I've seen him basically drag 10 other lads and do something unbelievable was amazing. Let's talk about, I mean, you said that you played a bit of football when you were younger, and I heard rumours that was your original dream, was it, to be a professional footballer?
Yeah, it was. I'm at an age where we were between professional leagues in our country. We had the NASL, North American Soccer League, in the 70s and early 80s, and it was kind of cool. We had a lot of guys coming over that were at the end of their careers from England, Ireland, Scotland, Germany, all over the world. I got to see Pele, Beckenbauer, some of the greatest play on our fields here in America, and so we had this league that we could see. I lived in Chicago, which is a big city, and we had a team there, Chicago Sting, and so I had that inspiration growing, but that sort of died away, and I was going off to college with this big dream, and we had basically no professional league in the country in the early 90s until we hosted the 94 Cup, and that sort of relit the whole thing in our American culture. They had a league getting ready to start, the MLS, and though it was small, it was something. So I was caught in between, and it was apparent that, I didn't quite have the skill to get to the next level anyway. I was left with, a pair of short shorts from that era and a bad mullet, and those weren't going to get me anywhere. So I dreamed the dream, but it was I just played, leagues around town here after that, some tournaments, a lot of international players around. You can pick up a 030 or 040 tournament, but I love the college game. We had some great players that went on to play for our national team that I faced, and it was a good era to build U.S. soccer again. 94 to 98 to 2002, probably our best year ever in a cup. We had some really amazing players, and so that's part of my dream as a U.S. soccer fan. Always the underdog in our little crappy CONCACAF strange region down here, but we've had some good memories. It's always a thrill. I got to go to World Cups in France and in Germany to support our side, and nothing more brilliant than being abroad for a World Cup, just to see all the colors, all the people, and just hope for your team.
Yeah, I think before I say what I'm about to say, you were talking about having short shorts and a mullet, but you'd fit in right down here, mate. Get yourself to Brisbane, you'll be all right. Yeah, I think the way that we used to, I mean, I say English very loosely because I don't really define myself as English. I've always defined myself as a Scouser, really, and I've never really associated with the English team. I flirted with them, I think, in '98, when I was 8, and I struggled to get behind them really much after that. But I think English fans, I think in a similar way to the way they did with the cricket, where they sort of looked at India and Pakistan and were like, is it all right, but we're England and we invented the game and whatever. And I think they did a similar thing with the football with America and the United States. And I think with the game, the way the game has grown there, in the last 20 years. David Beckham going over there, and some really quality players. And yes, later in their career, but I think David Villa was there, Frank Lampard, Andrea Pirlo was there. I think the MLS is gaining more sort of, it's getting more about it. And
Yeah.
I think the USA, dare I say it, in my lifetime might actually have a crack at a World Cup, but don't quote me on that. I'm going to cut that out the podcast. So you're in college, and when does music become a big thing for you, Jim?
It was always in me. I was a kid who had parents who listened to music, British rock, American classic rock, and hard rock. I loved a lot of different music, and I was born a drummer. So I was in the basement. I got my first drum kit at age 13, and that had me spending a ton of time in my basement just learning all the different parts from all the great rock songs. And I had sport as well, so they were clashing for my time. But I didn't join a band until I was in the middle of the university here. I was 21 years old, and it lit a fire under me for songwriting specifically. I'd picked up a little piano and a little guitar, enough to get in trouble, but write a few good songs. And by 89, when I was finishing university, and these three other guys who were also students were losing the drummer in their band, I jumped in, and we were called Hootie the Blowfish, and we all just wanted to write songs and perform these originals and play parties and get signed to a record label. But I grew up listening to just all the classic rock, and my mom sang a lot around the house, and though we thought it was funny when she would dance, it was very inspiring and influential years later as I began writing songs. And so just have always loved all styles of music and concert going. And yeah, we end up working for 5 hard years as a band, paying our dues, and then we get a big break with a record deal and a chance to get on the biggest late night show of the era, David Letterman, Late Night with David Letterman, and that puts us in front of 5 million viewers who happen to like our little song "Hold My Hand," and it all changed for us. It's part of the reason that we get to talk today is based on what happened that night with the viewers. They fell in love with the song, and it allowed us to get into the music business. And we did well enough to stay in, even when things got small. We ended up rising again. It's an up and down career for anyone that makes music at that level. And yeah, it's just been brilliant. It allowed me to chase football around the world and chase music around the world. It's been pretty phenomenal.
No, it's an unbelievable thing. And my brother's Jack, he's in a band, and he's been in some great bands, and he was in a great band in Liverpool, and Cabasudos. They were brilliant, really great bands, and they were together for a couple of years. And it's as talented as they were, it's so difficult. It's so difficult to get that trajectory, and sometimes people don't. And I wanted to ask, because when you went on Letterman, which is, I mean, it's huge in itself. But for him to then, he really endorsed your music, didn't he? And that must have had an absolutely unbelievable effect, both sort of mentally, confidence, but also in the minds of the public as well.
He did a crazy thing. He didn't only invite us on to play one song that he heard on the radio, but he had this thing night after night or week after week. He would drop in mention of our band name because he thought he was a goofy sort of comic, and he would do these recalls on our name. And just in the middle of a bit with no one in particular would look over to the music guy, Paul Shaver, and say, is Hootie ready? Or he would just say the name Hootie the Blowfish even when we weren't there. And that's the biggest advertisement you can possibly get. He was really popular and well loved, and he wasn't controversial or political. He was just a goofy guy. And to have that endorsement go through the rest of '94 and have us back to play other singles like Let Her Cry and Only Want to Be With You in '95 as it blew up big, you just can't buy that sort of attention. And he was always very kind to have us back. on later albums, and when he went off the air in 2000, maybe 14, he had for his final week, and it was a special arrangement for us, and that's a little luck. My high school gymnasium had said luck is where preparation meets opportunity, and I think that defined Hootie and the Blowfish. Yeah, we worked our butts off, but a lot of bands do and never get the right timing or the right thing happening, and we got both of them, and it became luck.
I mean, the band go gangbusters, don't yous? Yous go, yous go absolutely huge. Were you prepared for that? Did you understand what that meant to go that big?
I mean, we all hoped for it secretly. We would never talk about we want to be a big band or we want to sell 1 million records. We loved doing what we did. We didn't have much but each other and a good work ethic and a talented singer, by the way. So no one can prepare for going to the top. I mean, we'd never been on a chart before. We'd never really been on the radio, and so it's a thrill, and it's an energy, sort of like being in there when your team is 3, 4, or 5 goals up against their biggest rival. There's this adrenaline that builds in you, and we rode that adrenaline for several years. We couldn't believe that our music took us to the top of the charts, selling millions of records abroad. I mean, just it's hard to even describe. I'm glad someone took a few pictures because we didn't have camera phones back then, and I wouldn't have remembered all the great highlights if I couldn't look back and see how the journalists covered our lives for a few years. And it also goes quick, life changes, new music comes in and takes the place of the old, and so you have to be prepared. It's not as much preparing for the big time, but the reality that the big time doesn't last a lifetime. And that's the harder preparation. And I struggle with that on the way down, facing where did it all go? And what's happening to my life? Is it over? Am I 40 years old or 35 years old and the best years are behind me? I had an emotional struggle facing that.
Well, I hope at 35 your years went behind you because I'm only 34, so I'm hoping my best ones are coming, to be honest with you, Jim.
I bet they are, man.
The last 34 have been an absolute nightmare, mate. What can I say? Apart from that 7-0 at Old Trafford, that was pretty good at Anfield. Jack wanted me to ask, as I said, Jack's a muso himself. He wanted to know what it's like winning a Grammy, having your peers, really respect what you guys are doing.
Well, yeah, it's an amazing thing, obviously, to lift any little trophy or acknowledgement of sales and popularity and of your art. It's amazing. I think more so than an award, which still sits on my shelf today. 2 of them. I love it, and they're great. You can show your grandkids, but for us, I think the bigger thrill came night after night, actually in front of the fans. That's where we get our true energy. Being noted by your peers, or an awards show is great, but it's the fans that are in front of you night after night, sweating or standing in the rain or singing lyrics to your song you wrote in the 80s. That's where the true energy comes, and can't compare that to anything. We still get to go out and we go out every 4 or 5 years and we play amphitheater-sized arenas, anywhere from 10 to 20,000 people a night. And I pinch myself. I can't believe we get to do that because that's where the energy is. That's where the reminder is of the importance of a career in music for me, is that fans are still coming out. And I was a fan and I still am. I'm the biggest music fan ever. I go to concerts and I scream my face off like I'm a little kid still because I love what music does to me. So the fact that we get to give that to others, that's, I think, why the 4 of us do it.
I just want to say thank you for answering that question so eloquently, because the way I structured it was an absolute disaster. But you know what, Jim? You're an absolute pro, lads. You can come on again anytime you want. Let's talk about touring, because we all get this idea as fans of what it must be like being on the tour and having a rider and the limousines and all that sort of caper, which we all sort of I probably came up with from watching Spinal Tap. But what's it actually like out there on those big tours that you've been on?
There is a lot of all of that, and Spinal Tap is the most 100% accurate mockumentary ever made. It is a comedy of errors and hopes and booze and failure. But it's great. It takes you, mainly we enjoyed, besides the nice things you get, it's the travel for young men that get to go to lands that I never would have seen. I never would have been to Australia, or to play for our troops in Saudi Arabia, or on an aircraft carrier in the Middle East, or in Southeast Asia, Europe. I never would have been to these places. Subsequently, it always took me to football as well. It took me to places where I could go see a warm-up match for the World Cup, Chinese Taipei against, Myanmar or something random. Like, you never would have thought you could do these things, or to go see matches for the World Cup. So it always took us to places that you knew as a man, I could never go here otherwise. I couldn't afford to go here, or I wouldn't have dreamed so big to go around the world to see other people and play music. I never could have had a dream that big. So taking never taking that for granted, it was the greatest thing. And to look back, and I still want to travel. I still like to go places, and of course the World Cup will be coming here, so we'll get a lot of foreign faces coming in on us, and that's brilliant in its own way. But yeah, the travel was always where it was at. Going to England for the first time, boy, we all honestly we loved going into the a great drinking culture. That was important to us, but also just the history and it's such a good positive energy. Singing in Dublin to a big hall full of people, that when we stopped singing the chorus to Hold My Hand, they continued singing it. Ooh, just brought chills to us. We thought, are we really here? Are we really doing this? It was quite
Yeah.
amazing.
There's so many highs that you've spoken about already. Letterman, you win the awards, which, as you say, are really nice to win awards, and those amazing nights with your fans all around the world singing, I don't want to be with you everywhere you go. That was my best impression, by the way, and I do apologise, but I had to do it, didn't I? But there's another side, isn't there, of the ups. There's the challenges as well, and you've been really open. Previously, I've seen a few podcasts and things talking about addiction, and how much of a challenge is it to have the challenges of addiction and to also have this rock and roll lifestyle, if you like.
Yeah, well, I don't think being in this business of traveling rock mayhem helps somebody who can't control their booze. You end up being able to camouflage very well, because each night it's a party and you look like you fit in someone's party night, and then you move on to the next night in a different city and it's a party again, and it's easy to get in maybe a little cycle. And my only main problem was that while my bandmates would go home on our nights off and rest up and be with their families, I never could turn it off. I'd go home just as excited and feel that need to celebrate something, or maybe need a prop to keep me up because I'm tired. And so I started to rely on booze way more deeply than a normal person could. And mainly it was, again, you can ride that for a long time, but eventually mine collided with wanting to start a family and having little kids at home. And you end up having to use other drugs, maybe to again prop up the alcohol abuse. And so I finally came to a conclusion, after getting around a group of people who were professional recoverers, that I couldn't do it like a normal person. And that's the basis of it. Hey, if I could do it normally, I probably would, but I was never the guy who just wanted one or two. I was dreaming of bigger things in my intake, and so acknowledging that is just the main thing I had to do. And then there's groups of people around that are on the same journey, that we can't do it like a normal person, and we hang out together. And then you learn to deal with living in a society that celebrates alcohol and there's a lot of drugs around. Eventually, you learn to cope with that, and the obsession over it basically goes away. So today, 20 years down the road from that, I don't think about booze. I it's around and it's okay, but I'm not. I recoil from it like a hot flame. I'm like, oh, you want to see the worst version of me? Let's start doing shots, you know. So, and my bandmates know that too, so they're not over there peer pressuring me. They like this version of me.
Well, just to be clear as well, Jim, this is peppermint tea, all right, lad. There's nothing there.
Here's to
There's
you.
nothing. Hey, aren't we rock and rollers, mate? Um. So I mean, look, addictions are an obvious problem, especially, and I'm sure it's the same where you're from. But when I grew up, I was so ingrained in the drinking culture. You have a good day, you have a drink. You have a bad day, you have a drink. You know, stressful day at work, you have a drink, and it's so ingrained around us, and it's such a big problem for so many people. What would you say to someone who is maybe out there and is sort of on the precipice at the moment and thinking um, that they should maybe go and get help?
Yeah, well, first that there certainly are answers. There is absolutely a solution, and it requires doing the thing we don't want to do, which is maybe asking somebody else for help. Nobody wants to have to need somebody else, especially if we're grown up. But there's groups that hang out that can lead to a very happy, contented, joyful lifestyle without alcohol. There are. Now it's available online. You can go to 12-step groups. It's all over the place. But the hardest thing, and I'll say this, is that we don't want to listen to those around us. When people started telling me they were worried about me and they were frightened that my drinking was out of control, I thought, how dare you? You don't know what it's like. But actually, they have a pretty damn good view of what the results are. I may have feelings and I can justify and rationalize that I don't have a problem, but really it's those people around us that are close to us. If they begin to be worried about us, we might want to listen to that advice and say, yeah, maybe I do want to look inside and see if there's a problem here. And sometimes it's just alcohol abuse or some misuse, but it could be full alcoholism where you just have to do the difficult job of learning how to not drink.
Jim, I've got a quite a serious question, and I'd understand if you didn't want to answer it on the podcast. In one of my favourite TV shows ever, Friends, there's an episode where for Ross's birthday they go and watch Hootie and the Blowfish, right? Now, Monica Geller gets a hickey, and she said it was from the Blowfish. So who gave Monica Geller the hickey in Friends is what I need to know right now.
We have always deferred, blamed, credited our bass player Dean Felber for that. If not only because he's maybe the least likely person to have done it.
Very good. Very nice.
I would have been honored at that time, even though I was married, I think, or on the way to getting married. I probably would have been happy to have been the one, but we were all pointing at Dean. I don't know why. It was just an inside joke for our band.
So there you go. It's Dean. Dean's got it from now on. It's a new start to the season. Massive game coming up next week against Arsenal, mate. It's got certain parts of me tingling. How are you feeling about it?
You know, I love this rivalry right now. I love that we've got a title on them where they've been so close for several years. We thought it looked like they might knock the wind out of City's sails, but to see them come up short, I just think adds to the drama of this rivalry. That we've got a trophy in our hand and they're still looking up, and they're a dangerous team. I mean, they've done well with their lineup. I think this week we're lucky that we're going to face them minus a few of their big names. I think Odegaard and Saka will both be out injured briefly, and I think Havertz is on a long-term injury. So I like that they're a little beaten up. But then again, I think so are we. Our outside back situation is maybe not solved, and we've got injury on the right side. I'm interested to see if Esse will come in for them. That's something I don't want to see him thrive, but I'm interested to see how he'll fit in their system. They're quick, they counter well, their defense seems to be solid. I mean, there's not a lot of problems with that team right now. It's going to be a blast of a game, I think.
I think it's going to be an absolute cracker. And I think, interestingly, I think last year, Jim, we drew 2-2 with them, I think, at the Emirates. And we got a late goal, I think, a late equaliser. I think Mo Salah got it 2-2. And I remember thinking at the time, that's a great point. That's a really good point, because losing there, they would have had their tails up. And it is one of those games that it wouldn't be an absolute disaster to go and draw that game.
Right.
I think it's a long old season, isn't it, mate? 38 games, and I think to lose to your rival within 3 games of the season it wouldn't have the most positive effect, I don't think.
No, I mean, I think really this is last year felt like the year everyone was putting eyes on our team because of the big coaching change, managerial change. But really, this is more the rebuilding year than last year was. And so I think we're a little more fragile right now than we were last year at this point with a new leader. I just think there's more question marks. But yeah, a point at home wouldn't be a failure for me. We're evenly matched teams. Yeah, we have the trophy and they don't. Blah blah. But I think on the pitch, you got to say, hey, if you're 2-2, 1-1, 3-3, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. So would I love to shove it down their throats and come up with a big victory? Oh yeah. Oh yes, I would. But I think it's going to be interesting to see what we come up with in the right back position. I think that's going to be critical if someone has succeeded against Newcastle and maybe gets that starting position, then that might give us an answer for that. But yeah, Arsenal coming up. Woo, it's going to be a thriller.
It's going to be nice. Go on then, Jim. Tell me what you think the score is going to be, my mate.
I'm again 2-2. I think both teams. The great thing about both these teams now is that they can. It doesn't matter if they go down a goal. Honestly, maybe going down 2 goals isn't the end of the world because they're solid, they're mature. These guys have got loads of points over the past 3 seasons collectively, enough to win multiple titles probably. And so they're not going to be phased if they're down a goal. You just know that anybody is going to be capable of composing and getting a late equalizer. So it's never in this game get a goal up and sit back and start celebrating because that can come back to bite you in the ass real quick. I do hope it's a forward match. It should be. I don't think either of these teams are just going to sit back and be conservative. They have guys that it is their nature to go for goal, whether they're countering or got 20 players piled up in the penalty area. I think it's their nature to score. Thank you, Jurgen Klopp, for that thread of DNA, which will hopefully never leave us. He couldn't help but just push forward and push, and that makes for very exciting soccer.
Well, I'll ask you one last question then, mate, before I let you go. How many trophies will Liverpool win this season?
I would be disappointed if we didn't take home one. I don't know which one it would be, but I would love a double, and I think it's realistic. And maybe Slot's most important sign of maturity, like in the Premiership going forward, is how do you manage when you're in multiple cups, and that's a hard thing. You start finding yourself you're in 3 cups or 4 cups, and all the talk starts. I think it's easy to look at that and think it's very exciting, but I think you got to have a leader who's mature enough to say, "Hey, we're not gonna worry about the EFL, or we're gonna focus on Champions League." I don't know what went wrong last year. Honestly, I can't tell you how we seemed to be the best team in Champions League and then, well, get knocked out by the best team. I guess maybe that was logical. PSG turned out to be the best team. And then the loss against Newcastle, I think, was so unfortunate. I think we let one go there. They were hyped, they were ready, and I think it balances out the league and makes the league healthier for the future to have a cup in Newcastle's hands. I think that's good for the health of our league, so it becomes balanced. But I really think we let that one go. I don't know if we were unprepared or just a little burnt out or something, but that one hurt. I didn't like that. So I think we could. Think we could get a double, and that's my prediction. How about you? What are you thinking?
I'd love a double. I'd love a double. I think for us to retain the Premier League would be a dream. I
Yes.
think, but there's this romance, isn't there, with Liverpool and the European Cup, the Champions League, and every time we're in that competition, I really want us to go and win that competition. There's nothing better than those European away days for those lads and girls traveling across Europe. So, um, who I envy the most, more than anyone in the world. But I think for those to go and do that, go to those big European nights and see Liverpool go on to the final, which is in Budapest this season, and win that European Cup would be my pick of the bunch. But look, if we win the 21st league title and break away from Manchester United on that record, then that would do me very nicely. Jim, look, thank you. Go on. No, sorry, go on.
I want to know what your biggest
there.
worry is for this season. Do you have a inkling or a little something inside you that you're not sure about with our team?
Yeah, I've got a magic 8 ball here. Let me have a look. Yeah, I think for me it's a case of the balance, mate. I think that's it. And we've got two fantastic fullbacks who've just came in, and they both want to go forward. And I think that might take a little bit of time, and until they settle in, really, as sort of if you look at it as a six with your back four and your two holding midfielders, they've really got to gel, and so that's a little bit of a concern. But at the moment, in the long run, Jim, my concern is that I think we're short on players who would arguably be first pick at the top of the pitch. Gakpo picks himself, Ekitike picks himself, so does Salah, and then after that you've got some good players in there, you've got some good lads, but I don't think any would be breaking into that first team selection. So I think definitely one more attacker I think is essential. Otherwise, I think when we get into that Christmas, early January period, I think the wheels might come off. So that would be me concern, mate.
Yeah, fair enough.
But it's not going to happen. It's all going to be fine. It's going to be good. We're going to win the double. And then I'm going to come over to South Carolina next year. I'm going to go to the World Cup with you. Jim, thank you so much, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on Reds Down Under. And hopefully we'll get you back on again soon. Up the Reds, mate.
Up the Reds. God bless.
We are the Reds Down Under, and this is our podcast.